Welcome to my inspirational channel this morning, and I wanted to bring in something so different today. I wanted to talk about the age of authenticity, how we can revive real voices and oral storytelling in the digital age. Today we are discussing the age of authenticity, a time when raw, unpolished voices are redefining storytelling, education most importantly, and even identity. From classrooms in Nairobi to storytellers in the Middle East, we are witnessing a quiet but powerful revival, one that reminds us that the most beautiful sound in the world might just be the real human voice. Let us talk now on how it feels that the perfectly imperfect voice can be so perfect. Well, for decades we were told that good communication meant perfection, flawless pronunciation, rehearsed delivery, and no mistakes. But podcasting changed that. Now we hear laughter, background noises, hesitation, and honestly, people love it. A 2025 Spotify study reveals that over 80% of listeners prefer podcasts that sound natural and spontaneous to those that are overly produced. Why, you ask? Well, authenticity connects. The less we polish, the more people trust us. Because in a world that often values appearance over truth, the imperfect voice feels refreshingly human. And then we look at the psychology of authenticity, right? There's actually science behind this, because psychologists describe the authenticity bias as being a natural tendency to believe people who sound genuine. It could be a small stumble, a sigh, a pause, but these aren't flaws. They're just emotional fingerprints. They remind us that a real person is speaking, not a script. And in a time when AI can replicate nearly anything, that trace of humanity or that breath or the warmth or even the accent, all of this becomes priceless. So we don't just hear authenticity, we feel it. I want to share something about the revival of oral storytelling in the MENA region and across Africa. In many parts of the MENA region, authenticity isn't new, it's ancestral. For centuries, oral storytelling was a way of life. In Morocco, the Hakawati stood in marketplaces, captivating listeners with tales of courage and cleverness. In the Gulf, stories were passed down by candlelight, preserving family memories, faith and wisdom. And this revival isn't unique to the Arab world. It echoes across Africa too. In South Africa, for generations, storytelling lived beneath the shade of a tree, where the gogo, the grandmother, would gather children around her. Under the warm dusk sky, she would share folk tales of clever hares, brave hunters, and spirits that taught lessons about kindness, courage, and wit. All this wasn't just entertainment. It was shaping educational memories. It was education. It was heritage and connection. Those sessions under the tree taught listening, imagination, respect, the same values that today's podcasting world is rediscovering. When we record or listen to a podcast, we are recreating that same circle of voices. Only now, our tree is digital and our community stretches across borders. This type of inclusion does three things. It bridges African and Arab oral traditions, showing storytelling as a shared human heritage. It creates vivid imagery, so that gogo under the tree, she becomes a metaphor for connection in the podcast era. Similarly, with the Gulf stories that were passed down by candlelight, it becomes a symbol of faith and wisdom, which will pass down for generations to come. All of this strengthens educational resonance. It reminds listeners that storytelling has always been a teaching tool. Today, the spirit is being reborn through digital platforms. Modern Arabic language podcasts such as Kerning Cultures in South echo the region's long tradition of storytelling, from Moroccan Hakawatis to Gulf family narrations. They use authentic local voices to preserve cultural memory and to connect new generations to shared heritage. Similarly, across Africa, especially in South Africa, storytelling has long lived beneath the open sky. The Gogos would sit under the trees. They would be surrounded by children, sharing folk tales of wisdom, humor, and moral lessons. But these stories taught values. They taught language and imagination, just as modern podcasts do today. So podcasting in many ways is the digital communication of that same fireside or treeside tradition, because they feature voices of teachers, artists, migrants, and mothers, all speaking candidly in Arabic or English or Zulu about belonging, about identity and home. They have a beautiful blend of modern sound designed with the intimacy of traditional storytelling. So listeners will often describe these shows as a modern majlis of voices, a space where cultures meet, generations talk, and storytelling lives again, because podcasting hasn't replaced oral storytelling, it has just revived it. I want to talk about a case study now, and the case study is entitled Student Voices Unfiltered, because this isn't only happening in media, it's transforming education too. And this is so important for how we shape the future generations. In 2024, a group of teachers in Nairobi launched something called Student Voices Unfiltered. The idea was simple: let students speak. Using only mobile phones, young people recorded conversations about their lives, examinations, social issues, local change, just plain simple things that were affecting them in their lives or in their academic life. And there was no studio, no script, just honesty. However, the results were remarkable. Students who rarely spoke in class began to find confidence. Teachers noted improvements in listening, empathy, and most importantly, critical thinking skills. By the end of the project, 90% of participants said podcasting helped them understand themselves and others more deeply. And that's what authenticity does. It transforms expression into empowerment. So let's bring authentic storytelling into the MENA classrooms, into the South African classrooms, into a world context of teaching using podcasting. Imagine bringing that same spirit into the classrooms, and it creates a unique change, because in many schools, lessons are still heavily text-based, focused on writing, reading, and memorization. But there's always been a richness in spoken wisdom. When students share personal reflections, local proverbs, or family stories through podcasts, they're not only learning, they are continuing a cultural lineage. By embracing authentic storytelling, teachers can help students strengthen their language skills, celebrate their dialects and accents, and connect learning to their new identity, and see that their voice, however it sounds, has meaning. Because this will promote inclusion, right? Like a student who struggles with writing might shine in speech. A shy learner might find courage behind a microphone. And what joy this is to bring authenticity into the classroom. It will turn every learner into a storyteller and every story into a bridge. So across the MENA region, new school initiatives are already exploring this. They're using podcasting as a tool for language learning, intercultural dialogue, and digital literacy. And you know what? It's working. Because when students hear themselves represented, they engage not only with the lesson, but with themselves. So the human thread in a digital world is very important, because as AI grows and global voices merge online, it's easier to fear that we might lose our uniqueness, right? But authenticity protects it, because every accent, every hesitation, every story told from the heart reclaims our humanity. So from the Hakawatis of old to the classrooms of today, from the Gogo under the tree to the children celebrating life as empowerment, we are still doing the same thing. We are passing wisdom through words, one voice at a time. So whether you're a teacher, a student, a storyteller, remember your voice doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. It just has to be true. I'm Tasneem, and this has been a wonderful segment this morning on my beautiful inspirational channel called Seeds of Inspiration. Thank you for listening and for keeping the story alive.